this video we're going to consider some of the features in the upper course of the river. So we're going to start with a V-shaped valley. So these are always found in the upper course where the river is eroding predominantly vertically because, as you remember, it's much further away from sea level than it wants to be. So most of its energy is downwards and not sideways in the upper course because it's very high up, often at the top of the drainage basin, up at the top of the hills or the mountains, and it's trying to make its way because of gravity back to sea level. So it's got lots of energy and it's eroding downwards. So as you can see here, up at the top, we've got the river channel, which has eroded down into the land and is continuing to erode downwards. So it's deep, but it's not very wide in comparison. Either side of the river, we've got quite steep sides, and this was a couple of 100,000 years ago where we've got our main rivers in the UK. And over time, we can see that the sides of these rivers are weathered by water and by plant roots, which get into any gaps in the rock or in the soil and make them weaker and weaker. And over time, this material falls into the river, into the bottom of the valley, into the channel, and it starts making the sides of the valley into a V shape. So in picture 2, as we can see here, this is something that's happened over maybe some thousands of years. And we see here that what was quite steep sides here have turned, still quite steep, but it's now a V-shaped valley because that material has been loosened, it's been weakened and weathered, and it's moved maybe by different processes, maybe by soil creep, if it's soil, or maybe by rock fall, if it's harder material that was here in the first place. And that material is making its way down to the bottom of the channel. And that material is quite big material, which gets into the channel and moves by tractions, we talked about in the last video on transportation, and breaks into smaller and smaller pieces as it moves further down into the middle and the lower course of the river. And what it leaves behind are these fairly steep-sided valleys, which we call V-shaped valleys. And as you can see, we've got the river channel at the bottom. We don't have much of a floodplain here because the river, if you remember, is moving downwards, it's moving laterally, it's eroding laterally, and it's not doing much in the way of eroding from side to side in the upper course because, like I said before, most of its energy is going downwards because it's trying to get out to sea. So that's where most of its energy is. So that's the upper course feature, which is a V-shaped valley.